This is the Business Marketing and Finance Podcast, the podcast for all your business marketing and financial needs. Get insight from experienced professionals as they delve deep into their passions and share their knowledge each week with your host, Daryl James. Like to follow or learn more? You know what to do. Hit that subscribe button now.
Welcome everyone to this week's BMF podcast. This is our Ask an Expert session. I'm your host, Daryl James, and my next guest is one of the world's top business accelerators for entrepreneurs and leaders. Named as one of the top 10 business advisors in the UK by Enterprise Nation, he's the author of 4 best-selling books, contributor to both Forbes.com and Entrepreneur.com, keynote speaker and co-founder of multi-million-dollar enterprise Dent Global. Welcome Daniel Priestley to the Business Marketing Finance Podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now, Daniel, can you tell us a bit about your journey, what it was like growing up, and how you made the turning point to being the man who you are today?
Yeah, I grew up in Australia, and I grew up. When I was growing up, my father was a school teacher, and my mother was a journalist. I remember from a very young age, about age 10, getting excited by the idea of entrepreneurship, and what that looked like for me was doing things like car washes and doing jobs for the neighbours and all that sort of thing. And then I started running garage sales where we would get all the things that needed to be sold from my house and from our neighbour's house, and I would sell them. And I remember I made about $300 when I was 10 years old. Nice. Which was enough for a BMX, a Sega Master System. Yeah. I mean, I was pretty flush when for a 10-year-old. I was definitely. Anyway, when I was 19, I ended up getting a really wonderful mentor, a guy who took me into his startup. We went and we launched. We went from $0 to $7 million a year in the first 2 years. Nice. We went from just the 3 of us around a table to 60 employees in the offices. Yeah. So I had a very real experience from age 19 to 22 or 21, a very, very real experience of what it's like to start a business and grow a business rapidly. When I was 21, 22, I launched my own company. I went out on my own and I launched a business that became a multi-million-dollar business in its first year. And so we did $1.3 million in year one, and then we grew it up over $10 million in sales within 3 years. So it was a very fast growth business.
And you mentioned that you started at the age of 21. Now, as I can only understand that at 21, you might have had a lot of different ideas and different thoughts about what you might have wanted to do with your life. What was your mission in the outset when starting your business?
Well, basically, when I was working for my mentor, I had generated a side business within the business that did about $700,000 worth of sales. It made $175,000 profit for the company. Wow. My boss, my mentor, only gave me a $500 bonus, and I was really annoyed by that. So I guess when I started the company, I just wanted to prove that I could do it on my own. I wanted to prove that I could make some money, have some freedom. I rented a big 4-story townhouse when I was 21, and I employed people, and we lived and worked all in this one big house. Wow. And it was just about having fun and making lots of money. And at that stage, it was just it was pretty simple, really. All the same things that a 22-year-old wants. I set up the business in 3 cities: Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne. So I traveled a lot, and it was just about having fun and making money at that point.
Did you still have a business mentor at this point, or did you? What you left?
I had a bit of a different mentor at the time. So when I set up the company, I put on a guy who was the kind of effectively the chairman of the business, kind of a guy in his late 60s, early 70s, who kind of like was our coach, mentor, chairman, and speaker. So I did. I've always had someone around me who kind of coaches me, mentors me, teaches me how to do things.
Yeah, because I know that once you start the entrepreneurial journey, it's never usually a straight line. Did you know what you were doing every step of the way, or were there days that you felt like, I have to deviate from this strategy or completely change what I'm doing?
I knew what I was doing for the first couple of years because I was just copying what I'd seen my mentor do. So it was a very simple business back then. I ran a quarter-page ad in the newspaper on a Sunday.
Yeah.
That would generate about 100 leads. We would invite those people to a introduction event on a Wednesday night. About 60, 70 people would turn up, and then we'd have a $2,250 product or package that we would sell.
Yeah.
And we would sell about 10 to 15 of them. So roughly speaking, we'd do about, 25 grand per week.
Yeah.
And it was just simple. You run an ad on a Sunday and run an event on a Wednesday and make your sales and do your sales follow-up.
Yeah.
But as the business got bigger and more complex, it was absolutely, it was having to learn a lot, having to figure things out, having to adopt different strategies. And then, mind you, when I started my business, it was all about newspaper advertising, and then we had to become a more online business. I'm kind of like of the age where I can remember where most businesses didn't have a website, and then you had to get a website and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And was this event free? I'm assuming it was free, and then they went through the funnel. Is that how it was?
It was very simple. So we ran. It was a financial planning and training package that we basically partnered with. So we found a company that was very good at what they did, but they were very bad at marketing. And we said, we will send you clients. We'll actually develop the whole marketing and sales funnel and front end for you. Yeah. And we did a 70-30 split. So we would take 70%, they would take 30%. And we took all the costs on to do the front end. Yeah. So basically we ran an ad in the paper, and the paper, I think the headline was feeling crabby watching your investments move sideways. And we would have attend this training event on the Wednesday night. So it was 2-hour training. And then at the end of that, it was like, would you like us to do more training and also more support? The package is $2,250, and here's all the things that are included. Yeah. And then essentially out of about 70 people, 7 would sign up on the spot and 7 would come through over the phone the following week.
So within the newspaper ad that you was doing, I'm assuming that you was targeting certain types of audience like that when you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because in those days you couldn't really target. You just stuck an ad in the newspaper. The newspaper would go out to like 1.5 million people, and hopefully 70 people out of 1.5 million would respond. Yeah. And a normal cost per lead back then was over $100 per lead. Yeah. Whereas, I think it's hilarious. So many people these days, they're like, it's really expensive to generate leads. And it's like, how much is it? It's like, it's £12.
Yeah.
It's like £12 is cheap.
Yeah. Now, in your first book, Key Person of Influence, you say that hard work isn't enough. We must become KPIs in our industry. Can you explain to the audience how you help individuals become KPIs in whichever industry they are currently in?
Well, for starters, that first business, it only worked because we had a key person of influence who was the speaker at the event. That's why people showed up in the first place. We hired someone who was a very well-known, well-respected person to come and speak every Wednesday night. Yes. So we had key people of influence around the business. All my businesses have revolved around having a key person of influence. So, it's kind of like if Richard Branson is involved in a business, then, everything happens from there. The funding will happen, the talent will happen, the brand will happen, the media will get interested. Yeah. And it could be the exact same business that somebody else does, but no one's interested because it's not Richard Branson. So you got to,
very true.
This idea that the whole world revolves around, all industries revolve around key people of influence. So, so the thing with a key person of influence is that they're the person who evangelizes the business. They get out there and they talk positively about the business, and they don't necessarily work in the business. So you don't expect that Richard Branson works in the airline or he works in the credit cards or any of that sort of stuff. His job is to be out there being the brand. Yeah. And there's 5 things that we get people to focus on. So typically we work with people who have been doing what they've been doing for 10 years plus. Yeah. And they're very good at working in the business and looking after clients, but we get them out of their business and we get them pitching which is a really powerful way to, drive interest to the business. So being out there and doing high-level pitches. We get them publishing content so that they're putting out, articles, blogs, reports, books, that sort of thing. We get them to think in terms of products rather than services, like thinking in how do they have a scalable product that anyone could deliver versus selling their own time for money. We get them to raise their profile so that they get a little bit of media, they get social media, their name comes up well when you Google them. And we get them to do strategic partnerships and alliances. So by focusing on those 5 things, and we actually go through and do that with them and make sure that it happens nicely. By focusing on those 5 things, they move less about being, a commoditized person who can do anything. And who's doing the work to a key person of influence who's winning the work and who's winning the attention. And essentially, we get them to play that role, and then as soon as they're playing that role powerfully, then they do really well.
Oh, that's great. So the 5 Ps that you just mentioned there, is this something that you do within your key person of influence workshops?
Yeah, so we run an accelerator. It's about 12 months, and over 12 months, people focus heavily on those 5 Ps. We run training days, we run accountability groups. We really put things together in a structured way so that people can get a breakthrough in each of those 5 Ps. They can train their team. We give them templates, we give them resources, we give them access to a really great peer group that they can go and develop themselves alongside that peer group. We put them into a group of over 1,000 clients that have already been through this, so they instantly get a much better network to be networking with. So all of that happens on the Key Person of Influence Accelerator.
Oh, that's really good. And how often do you run those?
We operate in 4 cities around the world. And each city does 2 intakes a year of 70 entrepreneurs.
Okay.
So we have about 140, 150 clients per year who do the Key Person of Influence Accelerator times by 4 cities.
Oh, wow. Okay. That sounds really good. What cities are they? I know you have London.
So we're in London. We're in Sydney and Brisbane. We've got Toronto. We've got Melbourne. We do a little bit in Florida. We've got 4 main cities.
Oh, nice. When are you doing one again in Birmingham?
Well, we did do an accelerator in Birmingham. It was hugely successful, and it was brilliant to deliver it in Birmingham. But what was interesting is that I think we did 2, and then at the end of doing 2, the kind of like we had kind of hit the key entrepreneurs that we wanted to hit, and then people just said, well, we're willing to come to London, so we just kind of run it in London. One of the things I've found with Birmingham is the ambitious entrepreneurs, they come down to London pretty easily. They're not worried about that.
Very true.
We need people who are ambitious. If they're not willing to jump on a train for an hour to get to London, the funny thing is, I think if I was based in Birmingham, I would be personally focused on winning business in London and delivering it from Birmingham. Because there's a lot more, there's a lot higher budgets in London. But you can actually build a team in Birmingham more cheaply than you can in London. And actually there's a really great profit margin to be made just by winning business in London and delivering business from Birmingham. In fact, I own a company where we have an office in Milton Keynes, and we have 12 employees in Milton Keynes. This is a different business, a tech business. And we have 12 employees in Milton Keynes, and we win a lot of our business around the world. We have clients all over the world, but we deliver from Milton Keynes, and that's a good strategy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of my businesses, I do the exactly same strategy, where we get contracts from everywhere, New York, down in Australia as well. We get quite a lot of business, and we just based here in Birmingham.
And the smart thing is, at the moment, the pound is weaker and weaker every month. So for every UK business should be thinking about finding clients overseas, because it used to be that because the pound was so strong, it used to be that to someone in the US or someone in Australia, it was expensive to work with a British company. But now the pound is so weak it's actually cheap. So a company in Sydney or in New York or in Singapore will actually find it incredibly cheap to work with a UK company.
Yeah, definitely. Now, in business, should someone focus on bringing in income for their business or developing assets?
Well, obviously, you've got to have income. You've got to, you've got to live. You've got to pay the bills. But your income is determined by the assets of the business. Yeah. So imagine that you inherited a £20 million property portfolio, that you've just got all this real estate. Like, let's say you own a building in Mayfair. Yeah. Well, if you own a building in Mayfair, you're never going to have any problem with income because you can rent it, you can refinance it, you can maybe have, the bottom floor as a restaurant, and you can have some offices on one floor and, maybe turn it into residential apartments. I mean, but the point is that as long as you own that asset, there's never, ever going to be a problem generating income. And it doesn't matter how hard you work. It doesn't matter if you're a complete nightmare alcoholic. It doesn't matter if you slip into a coma for a year. Yeah. Like if you own that asset, you are going to earn millions of pounds. Yeah. So income follows assets. So the idea is that when a business earns £1 million a year, it's because it has a lot of assets that people want. I see a lot of young entrepreneurs or early stage entrepreneurs, they think that the way to make more money is to work harder or to hustle harder, to be out there, really hustling and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, yeah. But, think about it like this. If I hustle really, 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 really hard as a black cab taxi driver, well, okay, maybe a normal taxi driver earns £40,000 a year, and I decide to work extra time, and I'm willing to do weekends and all that. Well, maybe I'm going to earn 45 or 50,000 a year, but I'm not going to earn £1 million a year because I'm a black cab driver. Yeah. If I'm a window washer, window cleaner, and I've got a bucket and a mop, and I've got window cleaning equipment, I can hustle and hustle and hustle and hustle, but I'm only going to earn a few £1,000s per month. Yeah. Because I don't have a big asset. Yeah. Yeah. So the idea is that income follows assets. You have to hustle, but you have to hustle in the right way. Yeah. There's no just hustling doing more work. Yeah. The hustle is that you have to work during the work hours between 9 and 5 and generate and create assets during the non-work hours. So when Gary Vaynerchuk says go off and hustle, what he should say is hustle for income 9 to 5, hustle for assets on the weekend and the evenings. Yeah, I do like that. That does make a lot of sense. Now, in terms of your work schedule and you hustling yourself, what's your work schedule like when you're writing your book? Well, for starters, I don't really work. I just create shit. I just create, and my life is very much like I write books and I give talks and hire amazing team members, and I buy and sell companies, and I raise money for new ventures. And it's funny for me, none of that sounds like work. So I don't even think of myself as having a work schedule. Yeah, Some days last week I did absolutely nothing for 3 days of the week last week. I didn't talk to anyone, or I just hung out at the house. I've got 3 kids under 5. So I spent time with the kids, and it wasn't a scheduled holiday or anything like that. I just didn't feel like doing much, so I just took some downtime. And then sometimes I'll just intensely be focused on getting some results that I want to get. Recently I've been raising some money for a new venture that we're launching, and we've just been raising £300,000 as the seed capital to kind of grow it. And, from day one, it's got a £2 million valuation. And, and we're using that to hire some amazing talent and incentivize them through some shares. So it's good. It's hard for me to say that I have a work schedule. I wake up early because I've got little kids, but I don't do anything until about 9:30 because I've got to get the kids ready, and I've got to then take half an hour just to recover from the morning. Understand that. And then I've got a PA, and my PA, I tell my PA what I think is the most high value activities.
Yeah.
And like, for example, one of the high value activities is doing podcasts, because you know that's a great way to promote the books and all of that sort of stuff. And, you know, just to get the message out there and then, you know, kind of be part of the entrepreneur community.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so my PA, Susie, she just puts into my diary the things that are high value, and she tries to remove things that are low value.
Yeah, yeah. No, that sounds really good. Now, Daniel, you seem like you have a lot of strategy and a lot of business acumen. What are the top 3 books that you have made the most impact on your life, and why?
So this is going to sound funny, but the number one books that make the biggest impact on your life are not ones that you read, they're ones that you write. So of course, the biggest impact that my life had was when I wrote the book Key Person of Influence. Mm-hmm. And I put that book into the marketplace. I was 29 years old. You know, it wasn't perfect. It had spelling mistakes. It had a paragraph that was repeated, you know, but I fixed that. But what was amazing is that people started reading that, and then they wanted to do some business with me, and they loved the idea, and we started generating media attention and filling events and all of that sort of stuff. And that creation, that product, that book that I put out there, that had the biggest impact on my life. That changed my life. So the first rule that I would say for anyone is that it doesn't matter how many books you read or podcasts you listen to, or YouTube videos you watch. None of that matters, because it's all consuming. You're just consuming and consuming and consuming stuff. Yeah. You can't get rich by consuming. You have to create. So, you know, it doesn't matter what music you know, Jay-Z listens to. What matters is what music he produces. Yeah. And so it's great to get your inspiration. And of course, you got to get your inspiration, but you can get your inspiration from anywhere. You can get your inspiration from your kids or from a mentor or any of that sort of stuff. It's good to put good stuff in, and it's certainly good to put good stuff in versus bad stuff in. But I see too many people spending so much time worried about, like, I got to watch this video and listen to this thing, and I got to, you know, they're just consuming, and it's like, it doesn't matter what you consume. You've got to create stuff. You've got to put stuff out there, not put, you know. So it's all about creation, not consumption. Yeah. And the second thing I'd say is that the other mistake I see people making is that they try to read a new book every week, and they might hear Ty Lopez, and they're like, oh, Ty Lopez says that you got to read 50 books a year. Well, that's because Ty Lopez is selling 50 books a year. He's trying to sell you on a book club. Yeah, right? He's trying to sell you on a book service, you know, so that you're constantly consuming more and more books. Yeah. And that's how he owns a company called Mentor Box, which is him trying to sell that idea. The truth is a bit boring, and it's kind of a little bit annoying, and it's a little bit crap. But you are much better off, much better off picking 3 or 4 good books and reading them over and over and over again until you really absorb that information and you're acting upon it. Yeah. So, like, if you got the book Principles by Ray Dalio, you could read that book every month for the next 10 years, and you wouldn't be doing everything with it. You would be still getting insights from that book. You could take a book like Oversubscribed, right? One of my books. Yeah. And you know, I have people who write to me and they say, I've read that book 5 times, and only now on the 5th read do I really understand what you're talking about. And now I'm running successful campaigns. And someone said, I read the book once and I ran an event with 10 people. I read the book twice. I ran an event with 100 people. I read the book 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Now I'm running events with 500 people. Yeah. And they're like, you know, it took me 5 times to get it. So the big thing is that for anyone listening, you've probably already found a great book. Read it again. Read it again and again. Think about a martial artist. A martial artist does not learn a new move every time they do a class. They learn the same moves over and over and over again. Bruce Lee said, I do not fear the fighter who knows 10,000 kicks. I fear the guy who knows one kick but has practiced it 10,000 times.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, it's very good. But I mean, I myself, I went through that stage. I went through a whole phase of consuming as much knowledge as possible, just trying to make myself get out of a situation. And it wasn't until I started to create assets, which is what you've been talking about, until when the income started to really generate. Although I had all this knowledge, a lot of it, you can forget. And then, like you mentioned, if you listen to Ty Lopez and then you listen to another audio recording or you read a book by Zig Ziglar, they can take you into two different paths. And I found that in sometimes be almost blown like the wind in what you're actually learning and the path that you're on. Why do you think entrepreneurs overlook their own story and insights?
Well, the reason entrepreneurs overlook their own story and their own insights is because they're so close to it. So it's like an example. I'll give you a funny example. Yeah. My father-in-law, he has, in 1969, he bought himself a Rolex Submariner. And at the time, it was only £300, and he was working in the oil and gas industry. And for him, it was the equivalent of maybe £1,500 today. Maybe $2,000. But he bought himself a really nice Rolex Submariner in 1969, and he started wearing it every single day of his life. And basically today, that watch is worth something between £15,000 and £20,000 because it's a vintage Rolex. It is a very rare 1969 watch, Rolex. And you could sell that for, maybe if you market it, maybe almost somewhere between £15,000 and £20,000. Yeah. But I say to him all the time, David, would you spend $15,000 on a watch right now? And he goes, no, I'd never spend $15,000 on a watch. I said, if you did have a $15,000 watch, let's say you did spend $15,000 on a watch, would you wear it while you're mowing the lawn? Would you wear it while you're taking a shower? Would you wear it, when you go on a holiday, walking around China? Would you wear your $15,000 watch if you bought one for $15,000? And he's like, no, I would never do that. And I said, well, David, you are wearing a $15,000 vintage Rolex. And you're mowing the lawn, you're going on a holiday to China. He goes, but it's not a $15,000 watch, it's a £300 watch. Yeah. And I say to him, you think it's a £300 watch because for you, you've had it your whole life. Yeah. But to anyone else, it's worth $15,000. Now, it's the same with your story or someone's story. You might sit there and say, well, my story is not special. I just did this and I did that and I had to figure this out, and that's not very special. That's a £300 watch, and it's like actually your story is probably going to speak to a lot of people, and it's probably going to be add value to people. And if you get good at telling a story, it's probably a massive asset that is just sitting there right there on your wrist, and you're just not putting any value on it. Wow. I love that story, actually. That's a really good way to put it. Do you update your books as technology and the market changes, Daniel? So I just did the revised edition of Entrepreneur Revolution, and I did 15,000 words worth of changes, and I'm currently finishing off the revised edition of Oversubscribed. Which is going to have about 20,000 words. It's going to have more emphasis on data and funnels and all of that sort of stuff, making sure that people, really can use it in the 2020s. I'm writing a book called Doubling Speed, which is about using technology to rapidly double the size of business that you have over and over again. I just keep putting stuff out there. It's normally based on whatever my thinking is at the time. When I wrote Entrepreneur Revolution, it was about, I was learning so much. I was capturing all the learnings from being a startup. And Entrepreneur Revolution is really my book about going from 0 to $1 million, and just all of the mentoring that I got and what I needed to know in order to do that first $1 million of sales. And then later on, I was running campaigns and I was learning so much. So I wrote Oversubscribed, and then I was positioning myself as a key person of influence in my industry and trying to decommoditize from the noise. And I wrote Key Person of Influence. All of my books are very much based around whatever I'm learning at the time, and because I've just gone on a journey, the books actually take you on a journey. So Entrepreneur Revolution, then Key Person of Influence, then Oversubscribed, and then 24 Assets takes you on the journey of growing a business into the several millions. And the next one is actually called Doubling Speed, which will come out next year. And that's me going through the process of, there comes a point in your business where you've actually figured a lot out. The business is working really well. You've got a lot of great assets. You've got a great team. And now the focus is not about like creating lots of innovation and creating lots of assets. It's about really taking those into new markets, launching into different territories, you know, and getting those into the hands of more people, while also, you know, making updates and improvements and innovations, but not the same way you did in the, you know, from 0 to 5 million, you've got to really figure things out. From 5 to 50 million, you actually have figured out most of what you need, and you now need to run a really tight ship in order to go from 5 to 50 million. Yeah,
yeah. What platforms do you currently sell your books on, and why specifically those platforms?
Mostly Amazon and Audible. Audible is now 50% of book sales. So Audible is amazing. Everyone's loving, especially business books. People love listening to business books. I think it's because people love to make the most of their commuting time. Now, one thing I will say about consuming is that if there is a particular time of the day where you can't really be creating anything, but you can use that time productively, by listening to a really great book rather than just kind of like zoning out or playing a computer game. You know, that's a great time to be, you know, sort of consuming. But the only thing I would encourage is, rather than consuming something different every day, try and go back and listen to something a second time or a third time. Really get the learnings. Try and really, really understand it deeply to the point that you can implement. Audible is where a lot of people. Some people are actually discovering my stuff on Blinkist. Blinkist is where they do a book summary for like 10 minutes. Have you tried Blinkist?
No. I've not actually come across that.
Yeah, it's just an app that basically does 10-minute book summaries. It's kind of, I've found it's not a bad way. It's about £60 for the year, including all the different books that they summarize. But I found it's a good way before reading a book. Before I commit to the time of reading a whole book, it's kind of like, for me, my first read of a book is now Blinkist. And if I really enjoy the blink, then I will go and read the book in its entirety. And then if I'm going to read a book once, I always look at a book and I think to myself, will I commit to reading this, you know, 2, 3, 4 times so that I really get the learning? And if not, then it's just entertainment. Yeah.
And it's true. On your journey, Daniel, what's the best way that you found to market your books? You mentioned the platforms that you're on. How are you marketing your books at the minute?
There's something even better than marketing the books, in my opinion, which is just give them away. So every year I give away thousands of books. So I sponsor events using my books. When I speak at conferences, I package the books into the speaking fee. I love to give hundreds, if not thousands, of books away. And the reason for that is that it used to be that the author's job was to promote a book, and the author should run around trying to sell the book. But now I believe that the book's job is to sell the author. So when you're a key person of influence and you've got products and services and companies and you've got other ways to make money, then really you don't care too much about the book royalties. All you care about is that the book builds your business. And if you imagine that you have a perfect cup of coffee with someone, like you go out, you meet them at a coffee shop and you sit down and you share with them, this is what I do, these are the key ideas, these are the key insights, and you have this amazing chat with them over a cup of coffee. And at the end of that chat, they say, I want to do business with you. Like, how do we work together? How do we do business? Well, that is essentially, that's what a book does, but at leverage. So I can only have, let's say I can have, one random cup of coffee per day, let's say. And let's say I always made time in my day to have one random cup of coffee for an hour every day. So I can only really have 5 cups of coffee per week, 20 per month. You know, I could randomly go out and meet 20 people per month. But once I've got a book, I mean, I can just give away 500 copies per month. And if I give away 500 books per month, it's like me going off and having 500 cups of coffee. So lots and lots of random opportunities start coming my way. But here's the weird thing, the weirdest thing, I can't believe how this works.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I give away 1,000 copies of the book, we sell 4,000.
Nice.
So it turns out that I've been trying to give away books at speed, and the damn things keep selling.
Yeah.
I'm like, why are people buying them? I'm giving them away.
Yeah. Wow.
And I tell people that I give them away. So, but it's just funny. The more books I give away, the more sell. On average, I checked my Amazon account.
Mm-hmm.
On average, I sell a book every 15 minutes, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So, 4 per hour every hour.
Nice.
Is how many are selling. I'm trying to give them away. I try and give hundreds of books. Every quarter.
Mm-hmm.
We print up about 1,000 KPIs and about 1,024 assets, and I basically use them to, I find an event that's got 200 people, and I'll just make sure everyone's got a copy of the book. So I just do a lot of that.
Oh, that sounds really good. I mean, I like the idea and the concept of your book, selling the business. What has been the biggest hurdle for you in publishing your books, especially the first book?
Probably the first book was just not knowing how to go about it, and just not knowing how many. I didn't even when I went for the first book, I didn't even know how many words were in a book.
Yeah.
I now know that you need about 40,000 words to have a book.
Mm-hmm.
But then that became quite daunting. Do I have enough information? Do I have enough stories?
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty scary when you discover that a book is 40,000 words, and then you've written everything that you think you can write.
Yeah,
and you do the word count, and it's 12,000 words.
Yeah.
and you're like, oh no.
Yeah.
And then you sit down with an editor, and the editor says, look, you really need to go deep on this, and you need to go deep on this, and you need to explain the drawbacks of this. And then, you go through the whole process, and you get to 20,000 words, but then you realize, actually, I do have more to say.
Mm-hmm.
Finding time to write is also tricky. People, you kind of, what's tricky with writing is that normally you need a good 2 to 3 hour chunk for writing.
Yeah.
Because it takes you the first hour just to kind of get into the flow of thinking, and then you don't want to stop at the end of an hour. So, sometimes for me, I will block out 3 or 4 hours for writing. And I personally would rather do a 3 hour, 4 hour session once a week than try and write an hour a day for every day. A lot of people say, I'll just do 1 hour a day every day.
Yeah.
For me, I found it's much better to do 3 or 4 hours once or twice a week.
Yeah. More of a chunk. That sounds a lot better as a strategy. Now, what type of editors do you use at the minute? Is it one specific company, or do you use a bunch of different editors depending on the book?
There's an amazing company which I'm now a shareholder in called Rethink Press. And the reason I became a shareholder was because I really love what they do. And Rethink Press, I'm published by a traditional publisher called Wiley for 2 of my books, and then 2 of my books I'm published through Rethink Press. And when you publish with a traditional publisher, you have to go through the whole process of convincing them that you're going to be able to sell lots of books. And you have to, it takes about 18 months to get a book out when you work with a traditional publisher, because they have a schedule of books that they're releasing. Even if you submit your manuscript, it might be 6 to 12 months before it hits the shelves. And really, they still expect you to be the one to go and promote it. They want you to be selling the book. Their job is to produce the book. Your job is to sell it, as far as they're concerned. Most authors think that the publisher is going to help them sell the book, and the publisher says, no, your job is sell the book. Rethink Press, they can do the book fast. They've got editors, they've got ghostwriters if you need a ghostwriter. Everyone at Rethink Press has done at least 10, 15 years working in traditional publishing, so they know exactly how that works. They know all the tricks for marketing the book, launching the book. They're just so great. And then you can produce the book that you want to produce. They can help you every step of the way, and it can happen a lot faster.
And can anybody sign up to Rethink Press?
The thing with traditional publishers is they give you an advance, and for a first-time book author, the advance is pretty low. It might only be £3,000 or £4,000. They give you an advance on royalties, and basically all that means is that you still have to sell the books, but you don't get royalties on the first 3,000 or 4,000 because they've already been prepaid.
Yeah.
And essentially, when you work with a traditional publisher, let's say your book sells for £10. Well, the wholesale amount that they will sell to the author might be £8. So you actually, if you want to give away 1,000 books, it costs you £8,000 to give them away.
Yeah.
When you work with Rethink Press, if you want to give away 1,000 books, they'll give you an amazing, like maybe £2 or £3, because they see themselves as your partner and your supplier, not as your publisher who's kind of owns the rights to your book. It's the similar thing that a lot of musicians have found. They found that, traditional music industry was so wasteful and so slow and so inefficient. And actually, you hear these stories about bands that were given $250,000 to go and make an album. And then at the end of year one, the music publisher comes back and says, you owe us £400,000. And the band says, but you already gave us $250,000. They're like, yeah, but your album hasn't performed the way we thought it would. And we spent all this money on filming this and doing that. So you owe us $400,000. And then they have to do another album to try and pay off $400,000. And it's not as savage in the book publishing industry, but it is a little bit like that in the sense that you think you're getting a great deal with a book publisher. In reality, they're a business and their job is to try and make as much money out of the book as possible. And their job is to make more money than the author. Whereas Rethink Press, they get paid up front. So you'll pay them £4,500. So rather than them giving you an advance, you give them an advance. But then you own your own book and you can do what you like with it. And, you're in a much better position. And it would be like for anyone who wants to write a book, I promise you, it would be, if you believe that book is going to sell, you are going to be much better off like finding a way to get your hands on the $4,500 and just pay Rethink Press.
You're going
to own the book.
Now, Daniel, if you could tell your younger self anything, what would it be? So Daniel at age 8, before he started his entrepreneurial journey, getting £300 from his first venture, what would you tell yourself looking back now?
I'd say learn how to code and go start this thing called Facebook before 2004. And if you don't do that, go and track down this guy called Mark Zuckerberg and then give him 10 grand for 10%. Look, what would I say differently? There's not a lot differently. I mean, probably just acknowledge the value of your story. Even when you're starting out, acknowledge the value of youth, acknowledge the value of energy, acknowledge the value of creativity. When you know nothing about an industry, acknowledge the value of knowing nothing. There is actually a huge value in having a beginner's mind. So, it's just be tuned into your value, and then create, not consume is a great lesson. Make sure that you're constantly creating, not consuming. I would just and also just an underlying sense of gratitude that my 8-year-old self had no idea that 1 billion people don't have clean water and 4 billion people don't really have decent living standards or living conditions. So shut up, never complain, and just get on with doing the best you can to improve the world. So it's that underlying sense of gratitude that I want my kids to have. That most people on this planet are not living a life that you would change places with them. So so I guess that would be one of the things. Just that deeper awareness of it. That would be pretty heavy to throw on an 8-year-old, to be fair.
It would. Daniel, do you? Well, I actually know you do. You give to charity and different causes and organizations. Is there anything you want to Yeah.
We do lots of fundraising, lots and lots of fundraising. I fundraise for things that I think I love. My favorite thing to fundraise for is anything where they're doing something really clever and innovative. So Charity Water came up with an amazing way for solving clean water and creating wells in the developing world. The Hunger Project had an amazing, incredible way of setting up community centres that would take thousands of people out of hunger. When I see these kind of charities that are cleaning up rivers and estuaries because that stops plastic ending up in the oceans, and I'm always looking for something clever. And when I get excited by something clever, and when I see someone who's doing something really amazing, then we get behind them.
Yeah, that brings me nice into my next question, actually. What is the vision of Daniel Priestley? What gets you the most excited about the years ahead?
Well, so for me, it's about getting entrepreneurs to align to the United Nations global goals I want to get tens of thousands of entrepreneurs to use their business as a force for good. So my belief is that entrepreneurship's great because it scales, and if you can find a solution to a problem, then you can scale that. And in year one, you might help 1,000 people, then 10,000 people, then 100,000 people. That's the beauty of a scalable solution. And I believe that entrepreneurship in the 1900s was about solving problems of consumption and consumerism, but entrepreneurship in the 2000s is about solving the problems of the world and society, and actually using entrepreneurship as a massive force for good. So taking all the best lessons from entrepreneurship and using those to solve the world's most meaningful problems. So for me, it's about inspiring entrepreneurs to solve more meaningful problems.
Okay, that sounds really good. What's next for Dent Global?
Well, we're launching in Canada, so we're just getting set up to do our Toronto launch. And, we just keep opening cities and engaging different entrepreneurs. We've got a ventures arm of the business where we're actually taking stakes in businesses that we think are very exciting, scalable, aligned to values, all of that sort of stuff. I'm launching a tech company, which is helping to get small businesses using data-driven approaches to marketing more effectively. We're in this phase of we've found the formula, we've found what works. We've got phenomenally happy clients who love what we do. So it's just about scaling it up to more people.
That's good. Finally, Daniel, where can people connect with you for a consultation or your workshops? What are the media links, your website URL address and so forth?
Yeah, so if they want to connect with me on social media, like Twitter at Daniel Priestley, or Instagram, I'm quite active. LinkedIn, I'm active. And then Dentop Global is our website. And then, there's events that we run. There's online scorecards you can take to score your business. There's a lot of free reports on there that shows the research behind the entrepreneur journey. And you can just click and download those. They're just under the published content section. And that's really, really powerful.
That's really good. When is your next event in London?
I've got some really cool stuff coming up. 10th of October, the 10th of the 10th, we're going to have a look at Own Your Business, Own Your Life. And we're going to have, looks like, provided I can do the deal, and it's looking pretty good, we're going to have a young billionaire guy who's under 40, sold his last company for 900 million and sold the company before that for 160 million. And he's just raised money for a 300 million valuation company. He's going to come and share about how to think big in 2020.
Nice.
And then we're also going to have a guy who is an athlete who got hit by a car and almost killed. And he's on the rebound. He's putting his life back together. But he's going to talk about the mindset of coming back from a challenge. And he before his accident, he wrote a book called Own Your Life. And so he's actually going to share some of the key lessons and how it relates to bouncing back.
Yeah, wow. And that's the 10th of the 10th, you said?
That'll be the 10th of the 10th.
Fantastic. Definitely. And that's all, that information is going to be on the website, on Dent Global?
All on the website, yeah. But our events do sell out pretty quick. We normally have waiting lists for people who want to know when the events are coming, and it sells out pretty quick. So you got to just jump on and get a ticket, because most of those events, they only have 200 tickets.
Wow. Well, Daniel, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for the wisdom that you shared on this call. It's been really insightful. I've enjoyed this podcast very much. Once again, thank you.
Thank you for having me on and giving me part of your platform. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Everybody, this has been the Business Marketing Finance Podcast. I'm your host, Dow James. We'll see you next week.
This is the Business Marketing and Finance Podcast, the podcast for all your business marketing and financial needs. Get insight from experienced professionals as they delve deep into their passions and share their knowledge each week with your host, Daryl James. Like to follow or learn more? You know what to do. Hit that subscribe button now.